Hey everybody, welcome back. Now that the exhaust is done, time to work on some oil lines. So I put some fittings up on the oil filter housing. I'm going to make a new line coming from the engine up to that. And then there's this, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, Derale. Anyways, I got this oil thermostat for the oil cooler, so I'm going to be plumbing this in and getting these lines made up. Got a few fittings here on hand and get ready to start tearing this car apart. I got oil lines to make and then fuel lines to make. Mark the exhaust for the flanges I'm putting over the slip joints. And then this car is going to start coming apart, so parts can be painted and the engine can come apart. So I'll put you guys back on here once I get started. Here we are a month and a half after the intro was filmed. Back at it here and there. My wife and I had our daughter. She was born early, 32 weeks. She's in the NICU right now, but she's doing good. Thank you everybody for all your well wishes and prayers. Truly appreciated. But we'll get back on the bug here. So I ended up mounting this oil control thermostat. I don't know if you can see the Allen bolt, probably can. I put 2 rivet nuts in there and trimmed the top of the bracket off. But yeah, it's super tight for space with everything. So I originally made this line to where it would go from the oil pump up to the oil filter housing. And then I changed my mind. I decided I'm going to have everything go or out of the pump, go through the cooler, go through the thermostat, and then go back to the filter, and then from the filter back to the engine, so that way it's getting the freshest oil it can without having to circulate through all that, just in case. So this I'm probably going to shorten. It's a little on the long side, maybe by 1/2 inch, but yeah, I'll get to that. I'm just going to be starting to make the rest of the lines for this today, so I'll set up the camera here and I'll show you guys how I put the PTFE lines together. It's nothing special, it's just how I've taught myself how to do it with the best results. And I can show you guys the little adapter piece that I made to test my lines. So anyhow, I'll get set up and put you guys back on here in a minute. So I took the collars, and I call them a collet, I don't know what they're called, a compression fitting, that silver part. Anyways, I took them off of that fitting. And that fitting, that's where the line's going to go. So what I do when I cut the line, see if I can get this in, there we go. I put a piece of tape on it, so that way when I cut it, the stainless steel mesh doesn't like all start to fray in there and just stick out. So one real easy way of doing this, let me put you guys on the stand here. So you can just slip this right over that tip of the fitting. You can bring your line up, and if you can, don't have them in any kind of tension, but you gotta do what you can do. If you put too much tape on it, it'll end up getting too thick to put the collar over the outside, so keep that in mind. You can use electrical tape too. I just use what I have. So then when I cut this, I cut it right in the middle. I just have this old floor mat out of a car out in the garage, and this is what I end up cutting down with a grinder with the cutoff wheel. So I just hold it with my feet, get it right in the middle, and you got to go easy with it, otherwise it'll catch and kind of pull back and forth. And especially when you're not running a guard, you got to be really careful. And make sure you're not going too fast. Pay attention to your surroundings and what's going on. Like me having a fire going behind me with that heater. Right, here we go. Yeah, this thing will too, it'll catch and go back and forth, which will just get everything jumping around, so just go easy with it. And you don't want to sit and just go super slow either, because the Teflon in the middle will start to melt. was just feeling it as I went to where it was cutting, but not too bad. So I'll show you what I do to clean these up here. Let's see, I'm going to see if I can turn the light on while I'm filming. There we go. What a nice feature. So it doesn't look too bad besides all the crap that's in there. That'll get blown out later. But just a little bit on the edge here. It just kind of come down a little bit. That's not too bad at all. A little bit here. I usually just trim it with scissors. Just go right at a 45 and just snip around. Look at that crap inside. Nasty. That's why you always want to flush out your lines. So yeah, I just trim the stragglers like this little guy. Wear gloves because this stuff will stab you. This I prefer to do. I did have a set of oil lines when I built my engine run stand that were like the rubber with the braided stainless on the outside, and you had to put it over a barb and then a nut went over. The biggest pain in the ass. I will never do those again. These PTFEs are not bad, but I'll show you guys as I go along. The other ones, they just suck. I will absolutely never do them again. PTFE all day long. Alright, so let me find a screwdriver real quick that I use to pry back on this. But you always want to make sure you put your nuts on over the outside first. So I might as well do that before I forget. I'm sitting here talking too much. And also you can see where the tape is coming up. So you'll want to spin the nut on so that way it's tightening the tape. I've done it the other way, not paying attention, and unravel the tape, and yeah, it was a pain. Live and you learn. Just like that. Alright, I'm going to grab a screwdriver. Alright, even though it's cold out, I had to open the garage door. The smell of that. The floor, for one, it's rubber and fabric and this stuff. Just stinking up the whole garage. Let me grab a pair of scissors too. Let's see, here we are. Yeah, just go trim it around. And if you don't clean up the stragglers, what happens is those want to get caught up in the threads when you're tightening everything, so at least that's what I've found how I do it. Maybe my own singular issue, who knows. I don't know if you can see in the camera. Right here, a little bit of shiny. Got some of that stainless mesh caught up on the edge. Alright, so here is where you can undo your tape because you already got your nuts on. So this is where a tiny little screwdriver comes in handy. As I just put it, let's see, I'm trying to watch the camera and do this at the same time. I just slide it right in between the stainless and I just pull back. It just flares the stainless steel, makes it easier to put the collet on, or compression fitting, whatever you want to call it. So you see how that's flinging out like that? Because it'll go down. Let me grab one, I'll show you. It's going to go down roughly that far. So if that's real tight up against the inner Teflon lining, you're going to have more of a pain getting it to seat on this top edge here. And you'll get to a certain point where it won't really want to flare out anymore, and you also don't want to be jabbing your screwdriver down there and puncturing a line. So with this, you want to make sure this is as flat as you can. They make special cutters to do this, but if you're decent with eye, then you can get by cutting it how I do. So this just slides on right over the end, and you can see how it has those ribs that hold it, and there's a little tiny ledge right there. You want that to be flat with the Teflon. So with that on there nice and snug, now you're going to get your fitting. I've always put these in dry. As you can see, I've used this fitting before. That just slides down like that. And I bend these back as best I can. The nut's going to do it too. So I always try to hold, and they make vice mounts for the line and all that. This is just the way I've always done it. So I'm familiar with it, it works. But I try to keep pressure together as I'm turning this in or tightening it up. So now I got it as tight as I can with my hands. I even came with one of the line kits, the special aluminum crescent wrench. I guess if you don't want to have marring marks on your fitting, if you have it tight on there, it should do the same thing as this. Personally, it ain't no show ride, it's just Volkswagen. So yeah, just use some good old crescent wrenches, and these are just Amazon special. I don't know if they're Evil Energy or who they are, but they work. I use them for my fuel and oil lines, unless it's carbureted, of course, and I just use regular rubber fuel line at the parts store. I haven't gone full pro with doing AN fittings on my carburetors. And I'm not sure if there's a torque spec or anything. Again, this is just how I've always done it. I crank these suckers down until I can't get them to spin anymore. That's how those go together. The line won't spin, but on these particular fittings that does spin. So I'm going to get this side made up, and then I'll show you guys the pressure tester I made. So here's the line made. This is the tester that I made. It's just a 1/8" gauge port. This is for dash 8, and then I have one for dash 6. But anyways, I just put a T on it, so it's female, female, and a male. And then put a Schrader valve on one end and a gauge on the other. So I just pump it up with the air compressor. I usually just let it sit, and if it holds air, it's good. If it has a slow leak down, I'll fill a bucket of water and dunk the whole thing in the bucket. But I wanted to show you this too. This, if I tried bending this over, yes, I could bend it and stuff, but it would probably kink the line, and that's just a no-no, at least for me. So what I'll end up doing is, let me grab this other line. So I just grabbed the other line I already made. I'm going to hook it together like that, and then this side I'll just use this bulkhead fitting that I have. Oh, you bastard. That way it's not putting too much stress on the fittings. So I'll tighten this up, pressure test it. I am very confident that it's going to pass, but I do it anyways when I make these lines. I don't want to have a leak afterwards. So I'm going to get this pressure tested. I'm going to make the rest of the lines, and I'll put you guys back on when they're all done. Here's how all the oil lines turned out. Not too bad. Let's see if that thing will focus if I get the phone up in there. And then this was a super tight job up in here, and I'll still band these, or whatever you want to call it, tie them together so they're not touching on any of the suspension or any of this sheet metal up here. I'll go show you what it looks like on the inside. And I just have 2 fuel lines left to make. Yeah, this hole got a little bit bigger than I wanted, but it's okay. Just more air to go into it. And then I might even make a duct that goes from that hole, even if I have room. I don't know. It's going to be a hard one. And maybe have it scoop air from down here somewhere. But I'll make those 2 fuel lines and then show you how that looks. And then the only other oil line I have 2 more oil lines to make. One for the turbo feed and one for the drain. But I'll get this fuel line built underneath here and then put you guys back on. Alright, so here's how the fuel lines are looking. Alright. So they come off of the tunnel right there. And they're staggered, you know. But they go up and around the top of the bag mount. And then they screw into the bulkhead fittings right there. Of course, all this stuff's going to be tightened up once it goes back together, but I'm just getting stuff made right now. And here's the other part of the bulkhead fittings, and those come up to the Phytech. So that's a good amount of lines. The only lines I have left to build is for the turbo. So I think that's some good progress. I think that's going to be enough for this video. Alright everybody, so as usual, thanks for watching, thanks for subbing. And until next time, we'll catch you guys on the flip side.